social media profile. So if you get bored of my talk, you can just go and stalk my profile. Or so a little introduction about the Earthly Perspective. This is a student-run online magazine, a new initiative that students of Pakistani universities have taken, a very good initiative. And the topics we cover are scientific communication, scientific engineering, scientific technology and innovation. We share some recent news, some latest research, and definitely environmental science. This covers a lot of topics, including, but not limited to, water quality, forest, pollution-related applications, wind energy or other energy sources, clean energy, green energy, other land use applications, except from water and forest, like agriculture, ice, snow, and all that. And the use of satellite imagery for all these applications, environmental science and engineering. And definitely some technology and innovation, like, new research for, material sciences and all that. Sadia, I think 4 people have entered the waiting room. Can you check that? Thank you. And definitely, we always appreciate some new ideas about related to environmental science and engineering and how we can solve these problems. And, the problem of climate change, the problem of conservation, the problem of how to achieve sustainability and all that. So these lecture series are, one initiative to make students aware of these problems and how to solve these problems. And this is one of, like our few of our articles. There are a lot of articles mentioned on our website. Just write Earthly Perspective magazine and you'll be directed to our website, and you can see a lot of amazing articles, a lot of biographies on amazing people. And yeah. So what would we cover today? A little bit introduction, which I've already covered. Some information about the participants. Some basics of GIS and remote sensing, because not all of you are already, qualified in GIS and remote sensing. Some wanted to know the basics. And then I'll cover some data types and data formats. And then we'll talk about like detailed analysis for various applications, like which type of data can be used for which type of application and what sort of analysis can you do using the tools of GIS and remote sensing. And then lastly, I'll slightly touch the role of GIS and remote sensing in fulfilling the SDGs, and then we'll wrap up. So here's some information about the participants. We got some really great response. And as you can see, like most of you are like with intermediate knowledge of GIS, but there are a few who wants to know the basics of GIS and who are beginners. Medium of instruction, a lot of you responded with both English and Urdu, but we also have some international participants, so I'll be sticking to English mostly. But if some of you have any questions, I can explain that in Urdu as well. In the form of webinar, most of you chose interactive. So yes, I will be taking responses from you, so be ready for that. And I'm happy to see like most of you are students, mostly from bachelor's, master's, and some of you are PhD and professionals as well. And this is the snapshot of all the institutions. And I'm happy to see the variety here, all over, some international and all over Pakistan as well. So first question is, what is GIS? So first I will be asking you, like, what is GIS? You can type it in the chat box. And what do you think? Like, what is GIS? I know it stands for Geographical Information System. What do you think? Like, what comes in your mind when you hear GIS? Or those who already know, can you define like what is GIS? Geographical Information System, yes. But what do you think is a Geographical Information System? GIS stands for, like, that's its abbreviation. But what do you think Geographical Information System is? What is the purpose of Geographical Information System? So geographical information system basically consists of 5 main parts. If you see any official definition of GIS, which includes hardware. Definitely you need a computer, a laptop, a workstation to do all the data analysis. And then software, you need a software to do all that processing that you want to do. And definitely you need some people to do that work. And most importantly, you need data, spatial data, on which you apply all the queries. And then what are those queries called? These are the processes. You can calculate mean of anything, or you can compare distributions of various areas. Or you can, just if you want to know what is the population increase between 2015 and 2020 for a specific country. So these type of queries, for that, you need to store the data in form of a database. So GIS comes in handy when you have to do these sort of analysis. So the question is, why do we need GIS? I mean, we have, maps and all that, and the world was working fine before as well. So why do we need GIS? Yes, a system that collects, analyzes, and displays geospatial data. That's true. To integrate geography with information technology. Very good, Sabha. So why do we need GIS? Because GIS helps us represent the real world in form of various layers. We cannot display everything on a single map. Imagine labeling all this on a single sheet of paper. You will not get information. And also with GIS, you can zoom in and zoom out. If you make a map, that's fixed. That's at a fixed scale. You cannot zoom in or zoom out or add data or edit data. When you write it on paper, it's very difficult to edit. So GIS helps you with editing of the data, with distributing your data among different layers. For example, you have satellite imagery, you have elevation model, you have water features. You can separate water features. You can separate buildings. You can separate residential and commercial areas. You can separate the demographic or cartographic boundaries. You can separate the transport lines, that can be road and railways. And then you can also have data like precipitation, temperature, all that. So GIS helps you visualize that in the form of layers. So it's a real world representation, but in the form of different layers, which are easily editable, and you can put queries on it as well. So what is remote sensing? Remote sensing is basically, we mostly use satellite imagery for remote sensing, but it's not limited to satellite imagery only. When we know information about an object with the help of electromagnetic radiations, we talk about reflection, we talk about transmittance, we talk about absorption. So if you use those features to detect an object, that's called remote sensing, because we're not physically in contact with the object. We are just seeing the reflectance values with the help of satellite or UAV or a ground-based instrument or airborne instruments. So this is just an example. These colors are showing, different wavelengths, because in optical spectrum, there are different colors. So that's why there are different layers. And as it's not only limited to satellite, here we also have an airborne example, and nowadays drones are very common. And this is like the typical diagram to explain remote sensing, that, sun radiation is hitting on the objects and it's being reflected back to satellite. And then we can differentiate between different objects. So how can we differentiate between different objects? Because every object has a specific signature. Every object responds specifically in certain parts of electromagnetic spectrum. So why do we need remote sensing? Because we can take imagery of inaccessible areas, remote areas, mountainous areas, or you don't have to go far away. You can just take the imagery of the areas which are difficult to access, like middle of the lake, peak of the mountain. And remote sensing helps in larger spatial coverage. Ground-based data, you can do field visits, but they're very expensive, and you cannot cover continuous area. So remote sensing gives you continuous monitoring, both spatially and temporally. Like we have very, very high temporal resolution. There are also some satellites which are doing daily data or, multiple times in a day. So it's cost effective because we don't have to go to ground every hour to collect data. We don't have to go to ground every day, every hour, continuous collection. Even if we do, there will be specific points. We cannot cover, the whole continent or the whole globe in a couple of days. And also, remote sensing helps imagery in complete spectrum. If you use your mobile phones, mostly it's in optical spectrum only, but remote sensing satellites help responses in the whole complete electromagnetic spectrum. And there is no sampling bias. Why? Because satellites are collecting data from the whole surface. There are not specific points, so there is no sampling bias. So analysis based on satellite imagery does not have sampling bias. So this is what I was talking about, the signature. Most of you who are related to remote sensing have already seen this. So this is what we talk about, like specific signature of a specific material. For example, vegetation has certain values in different wavelengths. So we see that water does not reflect much in the near infrared region. So if you want to differentiate between water and vegetation, definitely we use the near infrared because water will have very low value and vegetation will have very high value. So this is how we separate between materials. We see like in which part of spectrum they have difference in values so that we can separate those land cover classes or land use classes. So it's time to conduct a poll. Applications of RS and GIS, I will ask from you guys, but let me share the link of Slido. There's an application called as Slido on which it will be helpful for you to give your answers, and we'll make a title out of that. Let me just quickly share that in the chat screen. So this is the website, Slido. Let me also check there. I think there are some participants in the waiting room. Remote sensing is a tool. It can be used in any field. So this is the website, sli.do, Slido, or you can just Google Slido. And then you'll see a screen on which you have to enter this hashtag. Let me just share that with you so that you can know. If you write Slido, you should see this sort of interface. So just enter the code that I just mentioned. And then you'll see the question, what are the applications of GIS? You can just start typing your answers, what you think GIS and remote sensing can be used, like forestry and all that. Can you all see the question? Just let me know if there are any problems, just write it in the chat box. So there's a website called Slido. You'll just add this hashtag and then you'll see a question, what are the applications of GIS? And you can just start typing your answer. I see some responses coming. Come on, I'll give you a minute or two. The answers are anonymous, so even if you think that it's a wrong answer, that's okay. Just keep on coming. So just go to slido, and then you'll see a screen in which you have to enter a code. Code is mentioned, hashtag 089595. Then you'll see a question. What are the applications of GIS? Just type in your answer. Okay, so I see construction industry, survey, forestry, urban planning, networking, agriculture, disaster management, hazards and mitigation, agriculture, land use planning, health, risk assessment, almost everywhere. Definitely, yes, almost everywhere. I just wanted to see like, what does the audience think about, or like, what are your fields? Flood management, water management, air pollution control, yes. Time series analysis, land use, land cover change, crime mapping, yes, that's a very good application. Feature extraction, okay. So I think we have a pretty good, you guys have a pretty good understanding of this, so that's good. So thank you for your participation in the poll. I will now get back to the presentation. So you guys already covered pretty much all the fields of remote sensing and GIS. So let's move on to the types of data. Most of you would already know, but it's just a recap for those who don't. So types of data mostly we divided into vector and raster. So vector data consists of point, line, polygon, and raster data can be optical, it can be of thermal band, it can be in microwave, which we call it radar. And there are also some other derived form of data, for example, digital elevation model, which contains height value, or LiDAR, which use light detection ranging. So that's used for a 3-dimensional. So these are sort of like 2.5 dimension or 3-dimensional data sets. And then there are different data formats. Mostly for the remote sensing imagery, we use GeoTIFF because it's compatible with almost every software, and it's used when you have to edit the image itself. So it's good. Nowadays, because we are moving towards big data and geo-big data, so there's a cloud optimized GeoTIFF, which is used for cloud-based computing. There's another format, NetCDF, usually modest data is in this format. This format is independent of the machine. So like also like it is compatible with almost every software. You can open it in any sort of operating environment. Apart from imagery, you can have additional data in form of CSV file, which you can convert into Excel or any form of database. And then there are software dependent formats. For example, if you're working in Envy, then you can save the file in that format. If you're working with Snap software, you can save the file in Snap format. If you're working with ArcGIS, then you have to save the file in that format. But the problem with that is software dependent can, they're not opened by every software. So, but like this GeoTIFF, it can be loaded in any software. So when we talk about GIS, it integrates all types of data. It is not limited to one type of data. So we can say that remote sensing imagery is a part of GIS, like GIS uses remote sensing imagery, but GIS is not only limited to the remote sensing imagery. It has tabular data, it has vector data, it has 3-dimensional data, it has real-time data, it has navigation data, LiDAR data, like laser data, 3-dimensional, 2-dimensional, it covers every sort of data. So let's talk in detail about the point data. What do you guys think, exist in form of point data? Like, what do you think are the examples of point data? So these are some of the examples of the point data. So, data can be discrete or continuous. But the thing is that we don't always have all the data. Like even if the variable is continuous, for example, precipitation, like rainfall, it is a continuous variable. But we have limited stations, if you talk about ground-based data. Yes, in satellite-based, we have continuous imagery, but if you talk about ground-based, then we have limited stations. So that is also point data. Although it is representing a continuous variable, but it is still point data. And then we have point data of discrete variables. For example, where are the houses, where are the hospitals, individual 3 points in terms of, urban area. And then we have continuous like precipitation, temperature, water quality parameters, aerosol concentration. But these continuous variables can also be, we can have point data for these variables because of limited measuring stations, because of limited measuring stations and all that. But if we use remote sensing imagery, then definitely it will be continuous. So the type of analysis that we can do with point data, number one is proximity or neighborhood. For example, we can see that in which neighborhood there are more houses, or where are the houses clustered? Where are the trees clustered in terms of urban neighborhood? And then in terms of precipitation or temperature, if we have point data, but this is a continuous variable. So we want to convert it into continuous variable. So we can use interpolation. We have some data, we calculate the value of the missing data on basis of the data we have. That's called interpolation. And then definitely we can talk about spatial distribution. For example, we can say that the animals, are clustered near a water body. So these type of analysis can be used with help of a point data. We can see where the houses are clustered. Most probably, if there is a school, then there will be houses nearby, or if there is a housing society, then there probably will be a hospital or a school. So these type of neighborhood proximity or clustering analysis can be done with the help of point data. And definitely we can do classification of continuous variables, like where the precipitation is more, where is less, how is the temperature increasing. And these variables can also be modeled through regression. Means like their values can be predicted. For example, we can say that there are a number of dependent variables. For example, we can say that if there are more urban area, the temperature will increase. So we can fit a model like the amount of urban area, how much increase in urban area can increase in the amount of temperature. And we can also do time series analysis of point data. For example, at one point, we can see how is the seasonal change in temperature. What are the trends in precipitation? We can do that for the whole area as well. Like this is the beauty of remote sensing, that we can do spatial temporal mapping as well. But if we have point data, then we can generate a time series graph. So some of the practical examples of this data and these methods can be seen. For example, see, this is an example of air quality mapping, the map of whole Pakistan for different years. So this is spatial temporal mapping. And definitely interpolation is used, or some sort of clustering is used in this sort of mapping. This is an example of urban forestry that I was talking about, the individual trees, and then you can make clusters. If there are less number of trees, you can make a small cluster. If there are greater number of trees, you can represent it with a bigger circle. This is a map of COVID cases, recently. So disease mapping. You can have a point value of cases for every hospital or every county, and then you can generate a map with the help of that. Water quality mapping, chlorophyll value, algal bloom value, or even we can talk about algal bloom intensity, like how many times a year we saw a bloom in the waters, and that can be represented in the form of points. And also these point data can help in generating quality alerts. Like if the value of aerosol is above a certain threshold, then the government will generate a warning that, this is air quality alert, so stay in your homes. Or if there's a flood warning or heat wave warning. So the next is the line data. So the line data is pretty simple, all the linear features, road, rail tracks, rivers, streams. And also one interesting thing is the species movement that can also be seen as a line data. People, just put tag on a board and see and track its movement. So that can also be considered as a line data, its journey. And you can apply buffer for around the road. For example, if you want to see how many houses are in 2 miles of a specific road, so then you can use buffer analysis for that. For roads, connectivity is very important. Like if you want to go from one place to another, what is the road network? And then what is the shortest path? All the applications nowadays are based on this process. They calculate the least path, and it's not only based on the distance, it's also based on, the traffic value and all that. So there are ancillary data incorporated in the model. And in terms of river, we can see the stream flow direction, and see and map the watershed. So first example is the navigation. As I said, all the, the Careem, Uber, Lyft, all these use navigation. They have a road network and they calculate the least cost path. And if you, and they give you a direction. And also if you take a wrong turn, then they also reroute you to the same destination using a different path. Logistics, all the movement tracking that's happening, that also use line data, that also use connectivity and least cost path. All the delivery applications, Food Panda and Instacart and all that, they also use connectivity and navigation and, the least cost path. So this is very important analysis. It's used in most of the navigation-based applications. And definitely in urban planning, we can see where are the major roads. If you want to have a new housing society, you can, you want to have a connection with the main road for that. And definitely rescue operation is also one of the very important application in terms of network analysis, least cost path, and connectivity. And lastly, with the help of stream flow direction, we can map a watershed and see which rivers is connected to which tributaries and how much area it is covering in terms of water flow. So the third type of vector data is polygon data. This covers all type of boundaries, cadastral boundaries, provincial boundaries, and also ecozones, like boundaries based on climatic variables, boundaries based on habitat mapping, or land cover classes. For example, you can have a polygon of the urban area, we can have a polygon of the forestry, we can have a polygon of vegetation, we can have a polygon of agriculture. And also ethnic zones, what race of people are living in one area, we can also map that with help of polygon. Similar analysis as compared to point data, we can also use that on polygon data. We can do some statistical analysis. For example, the histogram of different areas, for example, population count, health count, literacy count, then spatial temporal variations. For example, how did the temperature change? How did the precipitation change? How did the population value change? And then again, regression modeling. We can extract biophysical variables and connect it with the, with one independent variable. And then we can have one dependent variable, and then multiple independent variables to see if temperature is increasing, then what are the causes of it? So all those causes would be independent variables. And then last but not the least, the most, already people know about the classification, that we can use polygon data to classify land use, land cover. We can also classify cadastral boundaries. So what are some interesting applications of this data? Conflict management, because the traditional way of having the cadastral boundaries, people fight over it. But if we have a specific map, you know that what is the boundary, which land is owned by what person. See, then it will be used to help resolve the conflict between two parties, because you will have a very specific line on the map and no one can fight over it because it's there on the map and it's very accurate. disaster management is also one of the applications. And then by seeing all this data and, by regression modeling and forecasting, we can have early warning system. For example, we can have a warning of a heat wave. We can have a warning of a flood. We can generate warning of forest fires. And all this is very important for biodiversity conservation, because when we map species habitat, when we map ecozones, then we're talking about the biodiversity conservation, like which, talking about near extinct animals, endangered species, and deforestation, and how that is affecting flora and fauna. That is, habitat mapping is also related to biodiversity conservation. But with habitat mapping, we can see, like, what are the regions of a specific species, and we can also see the change over time. If the number of species are getting reduced in an area, then that's an alarming situation. That means something is happening there, and then people can make policies to, overcome that. And last but not the least, very important, which we all are seeing the effects of that, climate change. So GIS and remote sensing, all these, talking about deforestation, talking about more urban land, talking about more runoff, all that can lead to mitigate climate change and see, like, what are the causes of climate change and how can we control them. So yes, remote sensing and GIS pretty much covers every application. It just depends upon your creativity, because you can apply it to literally any application. So talking about the raster data. So satellite data can be multispectral, hyperspectral, thermal, or microwave. So in terms of satellite data, we can use the original reflectance bands. We can also use band ratios, or we can have some specific indices. Sometimes indices are a very cheap method, very easy method, very quick method to see the overall variation of a specific, for example, vegetation index or soil moisture or water index. Because for classification, you need some training data, some ground-based data. So indices are a very quick method to see, what are the problematic areas, so that you can then focus on those areas only. You can use land surface temperature for detecting urban heat islands, or you can do some, derived bands, for example, like PCA, principal component analysis, or independent component analysis. And definitely you can do classification, which mostly people do for change detection, this simple land use, land cover, and how it has changed over the years. You can use indices to generate normalized difference. This is for vegetation. You can also use it for water. You can also use it for snow, for soil, for any land cover. And then this is I've taken from a paper. This shows like global drought monitoring. Use drought monitoring index, and it's visualize the change over the years. The references of all these images are mentioned in the end. So like, I do not claim that none of these images are my own, and I have properly cited them at the end of the presentation. For example, like this only highlights water. So there are some applications which we don't need all land covers. So satellite data can also help us, pick one land cover, one land class, and do analysis on that specifically. And then surface temperature can be used to see urban heat islands, like where urban areas are more, then the temperature rises. So that can be detected, and then we can see like how we can solve that. So nowadays there is there is more UAV data. So there are literally like many applications of UAV data. You can do the same things that you can do with remote sensing data, satellite-based data. You can do all that with UAV data, but UAV data provide high resolution data. So with UAV, you can do surveying and navigation. For example, if you're constructing a building, you can monitor that with the help of a UAV. You can do 3-dimensional reconstruction of any building. You can do water quality monitoring. You can measure 3-dimensional forest canopy, because satellite data is observing from above. So UAV is very helpful in terms of calculating tree height, in terms of calculating the canopy, because this in return helps in generating biomass estimation, which is helpful in carbon stock monitoring, again related to climate change. UAV can also be helpful to detect faults in bridges, which are very difficult to do manually. And UAVs are also used for disaster management and relief management. So there's also another type of data, which is we call microwave or radar, or mostly we know it by synthetic aperture radar. So synthetic aperture radar or radar data is also very helpful, specifically for, let me go back. Especially for above ground forest biomass. Again, because optical imagery only sees from the above. It sees the canopy of the forest. It cannot penetrate through. So you cannot see like how much vegetation is actually there. But radar data can penetrate through the canopy, and that is helpful in estimating biomass. And also when there is flood, that means it's raining. That means there are clouds. So that's a limitation of optical imagery, that you cannot see through clouds. So there also radar helps in flood mapping, because it can see through the clouds. So there's also another type of data set, digital elevation model, which can be used for hydrological modeling, or you can map contours and see how the terrain is changed. And lastly, LiDAR data, which is very expensive. That's why it's not used much, but LiDAR data is very accurate. Again, it's used for forest inventory, for biomass estimation, so that we can have an idea of carbon stock, and urban mapping, or city management, any type of 3D modeling. LiDAR data is helpful, but it's very expensive, but it's very accurate. So it depends on your project budget. Here are some of the currently available data sources. Landsat 1 to 5, you can have archived data. Landsat 7, we're still having it. Landsat 8 and Landsat 9 is coming soon. And the Sentinel series, which is really a blessing with high resolution data, comparatively high temporal as compared to Landsat. And then we have MODIS for all. MODIS is used for all that vegetation index and all that aerosol monitoring. So one of the platform from which you can get a lot of freely available data is Google Earth Engine. So nowadays there's a usage of cloud computing platforms, because there's a huge amount of data and we want to do a lot of computing. Like if we want to see global change for 20 years, we have the data set for that. But your laptops, like our normal laptops, they cannot do that type of computation. So that's why we use cloud computing. So Google Earth Engine is one of the examples, and you can have a lot of data from this. And now I'm going to show you some of the examples of dashboards and portals. So here is one of the example. It is also used using Google Earth Engine apps. This is the chlorophyll value map, and I have specified you can change it to true color, you can change the, the cell light, and you have some graphs. So researchers are making these applications based on their data. So that means you can do it for your study area. It's not that difficult. And it's very interactive, like, you can change things. And another one similar, algae map. So I have chosen the interval, see, like 5 years, selected the months, and we can see the values. And I can change it to any, I can visualize any image I want to. See, this is how these dashboards and applications can help you see. So at the back end, it's GIS and remote sensing, which is being used for these. But see how quick it has produced the results. And for 5 years, using the conventional softwares, the ones, most of you are using, how much time consuming that is. And this is a USGS water quality data viewer. For example, if I click at Skinny Atlas Lake, I have chosen temperature value for 7 days, show graph, and here's the graph. So like see very interactive applications and real-time data we are getting. So these are like some of the examples of these portals. We're just coming towards the end, guys, just hold on. So why are we doing all this? Like, why are we using GIS and remote sensing for all these applications? What is the purpose? What do we want to achieve? That can be aligned with the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. Because what we want to achieve is sustainability, conservation. So zero hunger. Remote sensing GIS can be used for food monitoring, crop monitoring, and then also using logistics to see like how food is distributed all over the globe. Good health and well-being. Well, we have recently seen how GIS has helped with COVID, you know, seeing how many cases are in every county or province, and then how many people are being vaccinated and where vaccines are available. So all that is GIS has helped in achieving that. So that's one of the examples. Clean water and sanitation. I've already given examples like, you know, you see algae mapping. So water quality, that's very useful. And we've seen the application of remote sensing and GIS in that. Affordable and clean energy. We can map the mineral resources. We can map the areas where we can have, you know, wind energy and all that. So remote sensing and GIS also helps in going towards green energy, clean energy. Reduced inequalities. Definitely when you are mapping the whole globe, you're not restricted to only developed countries. You also have imagery for the developing countries. That means we're reducing inequalities. We're providing the same imagery, you know, we're providing the similar resources for all of the countries. Sustainable cities and communities, like that's our goal. That's why we're detecting the land use, land cover change. That's why we're talking about urban heat islands. That's why we're talking about how population is expanding, how temperature is rising, and how we can control it, you know, make it sustainable. Responsible consumption and production, very important, because we can have, estimate crop yield, we can see agriculture cycle. So that can help in responsible consumption and production. For example, if in one area there is more production than consumption, then that food can be exported. And also we can use that navigation and logistics parts of the GIS to export the food and track it, you know, from which source it came. Climate action, temperature, deforestation, urban expansion, all those are related to climate change, and all those can be mapped by using remote sensing and GIS. Life below water, water quality, you know, how that is affecting fish, coral reef mapping, all that is related to this goal, which we can achieve using remote sensing and GIS. Life on land, land use, land cover. This life on land includes everything, you know, species, habitat monitoring, population growth. And there are some like which are not directly related, but can be indirectly related. For example, no poverty. You know, whenever we have technology, that means there are more positions for people to work. So like this technology is also giving out more job opportunities. And also when we are mapping food resources, when we're mapping every, you know, land use, land cover, then we can indirectly help to achieve this goal. The next is quality education. Quality education in terms of GIS, we can relate it with, you know, the source of like provision of education, like where are the schools, where are the housing communities, do they have access to a nearby school or not? Gender equality. People are taking initiative to make sure that there are equal amount of women in this STEM related fields. And we have initiative like Women in Geospatial Plus. We have a Twitter community of Ladies of Landsat, Sisters of SAR. So remote sensing and GIS women are taking this initiative to make sure that more women are involved in the sector and there is gender equality. Decent work and economic growth. Definitely, when we're relying on remote sensing data, that means we're doing less field visits. We're having more, you know, spatial coverage with the less resources. So that means we're contributing towards economy. And also when we are having, like alert systems, we are finding the problem before it happens, like flood warning. So that means it can reduce that disaster. We can mitigate that to some extent. That also contributes towards the economy. And also industry, innovation, and infrastructure. Definitely GIS is a new technology, and with technology, we have innovation. And for GIS, like hardware is one of the components, so that goes in the infrastructure. Peace, justice, and strong institutions. That's not like directly related, but definitely when we are talking about cadastral mapping, when we are talking about resources, so we can definitely devise some policies to make sure like there's peace, like no country is overexploited. And lastly, partnerships for the goals. As I mentioned, like we have Ladies of Landsat, Sisters of SAR, Women in Geospatial Plus, and also like Earthly Perspective is also trying to, have our input in this. So this is the last like partnership for the goals, like all the people, all the researchers, all the institutions are coming together to achieve that one goal, like sustainable development, biodiversity conservation, and to have a solution for climate change. So these are the references and resources of every picture I took. Some were from the website, some were from the research papers. This is one good link if you want to get in touch with GIS conferences and events. GIS Lounge, you can just Google this and you will have all the events and conferences if anyone is interested, So once again, I'll ask you to go to Slido. Let me share that again. And let me activate that poll. So now you'll be seeing on that website, when you add that hashtag, like key takeaways, anything, if you learned something, I would like to know, like any key takeaways. I'll share all the references and all the dashboard links. I'll send to all the registered participants via email. But if you want, I can share it here as well. No worries. Meanwhile, you guys fill up the poll. I'll share the links to all those dashboards that I just showed you. Applications of GIS types of data used, yes. Connecting SDGs with GIS. Products that were shown in the USGS portal, what they built in, yeah, they were built in. Okay, meanwhile you fill in the key takeaways, I'll just quickly wrap up the presentation. So this is our next lecture on 6th September by Dr. Zakir Nawaz, and that will be on membrane bioreactors for wastewater treatment. A Google form will be shared on the official Earthly Perspective website, and I'll also share it on my social media profiles as well. If you're interested, then we can also send it to you via email for those participants who were registered. And you can also be a part of Earthly Perspective team. We have these positions, and if anyone is willing to join, we'll be happy to have you. These are some of the benefits. So you can get experience letter, you can get a recommendation letter on demand. You will have free access to all the training materials for writing and editing. And definitely when you're working in a team, it will sharpen your interpersonal skills. And thank you so much. I will now see like questions in the chat. So we have a lot of answers for the key takeaways. Came to know about the portals and dashboards that can be helpful. Yes, that's true. Came to know about applications of RS, connecting SDGs with GIS. Okay, guys, thank you everyone for listening patiently and for participating. Okay, let me go through the questions now.
Rabia, the first question is, how does ethnic zone mapping work?
Yeah, so you can see, like, with different ethnic zones, you can check the difference between employment opportunities, between the resources they have, access to education, and all that, social and demographic values. The next is like they asked to share the dashboard links. I already did that.
Next is, how does a radiometric radio resolution affect the analysis?
So we want greater radiometric resolution so that we can differentiate between different species. Mostly radiometric resolution is more important when you're talking about differentiating between, same land cover. For example, if you're differentiating within forest, like which type of forest, then the better radiometric resolution, the better results. The simple answer is like the greater the resolutions, either it's spatial, temporal, or radiometric, we want, like we are remote sensing scientists are very greedy. We want as high resolutions, all of them as possible. But we haven't achieved the ultimate sensor yet, but people are still working because they have like trade-off between different resolutions. So yeah.
Yeah, especially this Antarctic Aperture Radar, SAR Sentinel-1 data, it is an add-on.
Yes, SAR is an add-on.
Rabia, can you please elaborate